Jacob journeyed to the land of his ancestors in the east. He came across some shepherds and he asked them,
"Friend, I don't have a GPS or a map. Tell me, where am I?"
"You are near Haran."
"Oh, good. For a second there, I thought I was lost. Do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson?"
"Yes, I know him. Look, here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep."
When Jacob saw his cousin Rachel with the flock of sheep, he went and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and helped her water the sheep. He told her that he was the son of Rebekah. So she ran and told her father. And as soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, he hurried to meet him. He embraced him, he kissed him, and he brought him to his home. And then Laban said to him,
"You are my flesh and blood. Come and stay with us."
Now Laban had 2 daughters, Leah the older and Rachel. Leah was cross-eyed, and Rachel was very beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel, even though she was very young, and he wanted to marry her.
"Laban, my uncle, I'll work for you 2 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel."
And the bidding begins. I got 2 years. I'll live with the beautiful Rachel. Do we hear more? Would you give 4? Would you give 4? Would you bid 4? Would you give 4 years for? Anybody willing to go?
I'll do 4.
4 years from the gentleman with the sheep. I'm looking for 5. Got 5, now 6. Now I'm looking for 6. Got 6, now 7. Now looking for 7. Looking for 7. She's a good one, folks. Would you give 4? Would you bid 4? Would you go 4? Would you go 7? Anybody here give him 7 years for a bit of heaven?
Me, I'll do it.
I got 7 years from the young man in front. Now, do we hear more? 4? Do we hear more? Do we hear more? I got 7 years once. I 7 years twice, and sold to the young man in front for 7 years of hard labor.
Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because his mad, passionate love for her. When it was time for the wedding, Laban brought together all the people of the region and gave a feast. But when evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob. When morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban,
"What is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel. Why have you tricked me in giving me your cross-eyed daughter?"
Hey, wait a minute. I'm right here, you know.
It is not our custom to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one. Besides, you have already taken her to your bed. She must remain as your wife. Finish the bridal week, then I will give you Rachel in return for more years of hard work.
And the bidding begins at 2 years of labor for the lovely Rachel. Would you give 2? Would you go 2? Would you give 2? Okay, I got 2 years for now. Do I hear 4? Do I hear 4 years?
4.
Oh, yes. 4 years from the guy with the devilish face. Do I hear 7? Would you give 7? Would you go 7? Would you bid 7?
I know, but it's so much fun.
I'll do
7
7.
years from the guy with the frustrated face. I got 7 going once, 7 going twice. Sold to the same man for another years of 7 years of hard labor. This auction is over.
Jeez, I can't believe I fell for that again.
Jacob finished the bridal week with Leah, and then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife.
Charge! Here we are, folks, at the top of the game. This is going to be a doozy. We don't know who is going to win this one, but we do know that the competition will be fierce.
That's right, Bob. These 2 women have been at each other's throats since Jacob arrived at the well. They are determined to outperform each other for his love and attention.
You said it, Jim. This poor fella sure has a tough road ahead of him, trying to keep these 2 women satisfied. Who will win out in the end? We don't know. But Leah is older and ready to give birth.
Yes, I'm sure that will give her an advantage over the sister, who is considerably younger.
You got that right, Jim. I can't wait to see who will give birth to more children. So, let's play ball.
Charge! God saw that Jacob loved Rachel over Leah, so God helped Leah that she might easily become pregnant.
Hey, that's not fair.
Charge! And so it was that Leah gave Jacob 4 boys within 4 years' time. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became very jealous. So she said to Jacob,
Give me children or I'll die.
It's not my fault you are not able to get pregnant. What do you want me to do?
Here is my servant. Sleep with her so that she can bear children for me, and I too can build a family through her.
Well, if you say so, I'll sacrifice myself so that you might have children through your servant.
Rachel gave her servant to serve as his wife, and Jacob slept with her. And twice she became pregnant, giving him 2 sons.
God has listened to my plea and given me 2 sons. My struggle with my sister has ended. I am no longer a loser.
When Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she took her servant and gave her to Jacob as a wife.
Jacob, I am in this ferocious competition against Rachel. Although I'm ahead 4-2, I want you to take my servant and sleep with her so she can bear more children and they can be added to my count.
Well, for the sake of your competition, I'll sacrifice myself again.
So Jacob slept with Leah's servant, and over time she bore him 2 more sons.
What a game. Wow, what stamina. What an outstanding performance by Jacob. He has fathered 8 boys.
That's right, Bob. This young man is impressive. Just when you think the game is over, here comes another servant willing to change the score.
With a 6-2 lead, it sure seems like Leah can relax.
No, wait. I think Leah's going to make another move.
That's right, Jim. It looks like Leah wants to increase her lead and make it impossible for Rachel to catch up.
I am the champion, my friends. I'll keep having children till the end. I am the champion, I am the champion, and you are the loser, 'cause I am the champion of the world.
And so it was that Leah bore Jacob 2 more sons, and later bore him a daughter named Dinah.
Well, it looks like it's game over for Rachel.
I'm not so sure, Bob. Rachel may still have a few pregnancies up her sleeve, and you've got to remember that no matter how many times Leah may conceive, Rachel is still Jacob's favorite.
That's true, Jim. You can never count out the favorite.
Charge!
And so it was that Rachel became pregnant and gave birth to a son and named him Joseph.
Oh, I'm tired. Do you mind if I go back to my homeland?
Why do you want to leave? Aren't you having fun?
I am, but having all these wives is very tiring. I think it's best if I go and take the sheep that are rightfully mine.
So Jacob left the home of Laban, and he sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau and instructed them.
This is what you are to say to my brother Esau. Tell him that I have been staying with our uncle Laban. Tell him that I have cattle and donkeys, sheep and goats, male and female servants. All of them I offer to him so that I may find favor in his eyes.
When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said,
Yo, dude, we went to see your brother Esau, man, and now he's coming to meet you, and he's got like 400 men with him. Count them, 400, dude.
and Jacob was very afraid.
O God of Abraham and my father Isaac, I pray, please save me from the hand of my brother Esau.
That day, Jacob took his 2 wives, his servant concubines, and his children, and sent them ahead with servants and with all of his possessions on camels, leaving him alone. That night, an angel appeared and wrestled with him until daybreak. Jacob's hip became wrenched as they wrestled, but Jacob would not let go of the angel.
Let me go, mortal, for it is daybreak.
I will not let you go until you bless me.
Let me go now.
Bless me.
Fine. Your name will no longer be Jacob. Henceforth, your name will be Israel, because you have struggled with God and have overcome. Now let me go.
Jacob, now named Israel, continued his journey with an injured hip. After a whole day's journey, he came upon Esau, who had 400 men with him. Israel bowed to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. Esau ran out to meet Israel. He embraced and kissed him, and together they both wept.
Who are these people?
They are the family God has graciously given me.
And one by one, Israel's wives and children approached Esau and bowed down. And at the last were Rachel and Joseph, who also bowed.
What's the meaning of this? Why have you sent servant, sheep, and cattle to me?
To find favor in your eyes, my lord.
I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what is yours.
No, please, if I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift. To see your face receiving me favorably is like seeing the face of God. Please accept what I offer, for God has been gracious to me.
And because Israel insisted, Esau accepted it. So on that day, Esau returned to the land where he was living, and Israel went on to Succoth, where he built a place for himself and his family. He and Rachel lived happily together in the land of Canaan. Charge! And Rachel gave birth to Israel's 12th son, Benjamin, but she died while giving birth. To this day, her gravesite is considered sacred and holy.
Round of applause for these dramatic leaders. Won't you please pray with me? May the words from my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. And there they go. Grace and peace be with you on this day. When I was a freshman in high school, I was a skinny little kid. I had more bones than anything else. I must have weighed 90 pounds. And some thought entered my mind that I could enter the wrestling team and be part of it. Little did I know that I would spend the entire season on the mat being pinned down by kids that were considerably heavier and stronger than me. But I persevered. And I finally had one match where I won and I pinned the kid down. There was contention about it. They all said that, he was only in 3rd grade and I was being a bully, but nonetheless, I won. Wrestling is about dominating your opponent. Wrestling is about getting your opponent in a certain position where he or she cannot get out of it, and eventually they have to cry uncle. Unlike boxing, where they beat each other into a bloody pulp until one of them is knocked out and unable to get back up, wrestling is more about maneuvering, and it does require a lot of strength, but it also requires a lot of strategy. But what if our wrestling opponent is our own worldview? What if our wrestling opponent is within us, and it's our own paradigm as to how we approach life and how we approach crisis? Today's scripture reading is about Jacob, and we spent a lot of time with him and about his wives and his descendants and who gave birth to who and how many wives he had and so forth, and we had a lot of fun with it as a team putting the scripture together. The reason it's there in the book of Genesis, and the reason it goes on for easily 2 chapters, is that it's the fulfillment of God's promise. Remember, God promised Abraham that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars and as the dust on the earth. And then he made that same promise to Jacob. And so now, this is how it happens. And through the 12 tribes of Israel, the descendants begin to become numerous. But the thing is that it's more than just about that. If we continue with the storyline and we continue to what's happening, we actually see how the storyline becomes to connect with previous storylines, and it all goes full circle with narratives that were presented several chapters earlier in the book of Genesis. Going back to the sibling rivalry between Jacob and his brother and what separated them. And they were estranged from each other easily for 14 years, if not longer. And so, at one point or another, Jacob decides to return. He's got to go back home. You could only run away from home for so long, and you must return. And in that process of returning home, he's now a wealthy man. He's got plenty of sheep, he's got plenty of cattle, he's got plenty of servants, he's got plenty of wives and children, and he is hesitating. He's not sure if he wants to go back home. The reason being is that he's got to face his inner demons. He's got to face his brother whom he wronged. He's got to come face to face with his sins. And so Jacob goes ahead and sends everybody ahead of him, and he's left alone. He's left alone that night. There are no distractions. There's no HBO Game of Thrones to watch. There's nothing to keep him busy doing. And so he starts to struggle with his own internal dilemma. And he asks, through this wrestling of the night, he asks the man that he wrestles to bless him. Now, rabbinical tradition had some sort of quandary over the centuries about this. They didn't know how to interpret the scriptures. Was this just an unknown man that came and wrestled with Jacob? Or was this God that came disguised in the form of a man? And then for a while there, the way they reconciled the two ideas was that they created a third option of saying that this was an angel of God. And so for many years, this tradition was that Jacob wrestled in the night with an angel. Some of your Bibles traditionally may have had that heading in the book of Genesis. So he starts to go ahead and have this wrestling match, and he asks to be blessed. The question is, what kind of blessing was he expecting? What kind of blessing was he hoping that he would receive from this angel of God? And to get a glimpse as to what he was wanting, what kind of blessing he wanted, you have to see what is it that he was praying for. Because we all want to get blessed. We are dreaming of blessing, of a better future, of better health, of more riches and fame, some people want to be blessed with power, some people want to be blessed with a large family, and so forth and so forth. So he'd already received a significant blessing from God. What kind of blessing was he expecting now? It's in his prayer. When he hears from the messenger that Esau is coming to meet him, and he's brought 400 men with him. That's an army. Okay, Esau is coming with his own army. It is a posture of aggression. And so what does he say? He says, God save me from my brother's wrath. God save me from my brother's hand is what another translation would say. And so this shows us that he was afraid. He was deeply afraid for his life. And so as he wrestles with the man, with the angel, he asks to be blessed, and he goes, I will not let you go until you bless me. It is an act of desperation. He's asking to be blessed, and the angel goes ahead and delivers a blessing, but it may not be the blessing that he wanted. But it certainly ended up being the blessing that he needed. Now let's take a look at this wrestling match before I go into the blessing a bit more. We can look at this wrestling match in several ways. The most obvious one, which is the one that you've probably heard in previous sermons from different pastors that have addressed this passage, is that Jacob's wrestling match with the angel is a metaphor. And that this is a metaphor for a man struggling with his inner demons, and this is something that's relevant to our lives. As we take a look at it, we may think that it's pertinent to families that are struggling with addiction. Maybe it's a metaphor for interpersonal relationships. And people use it, the whole image of wrestling and fighting as we're fighting an illness, or as we are battling the elements and so forth. So this is a metaphor that we could use at the individual level. Each of us in our own predicament may at one point or another come across with this struggle. And I am struggling for this, and I'm not going to end my struggle until I am blessed in the manner that I deserve at the end of this. But more significant than this wrestling match and the outcome of it, whether you win or lose, is my next point, and that is what happens during the wrestling. What happens to the person who chooses to enter into a struggle? When you put your hands into the issue and you allow for that issue to put its hands on you, you are risking being changed. You are risking a transformation of some sort. People who don't want to change, people who want to keep their views steadfast, do not enter into dialogue. Consider families who are in some sort of battle with each other, and then somebody says, you guys should do some family therapy. The person who refuses the therapy is usually the person who doesn't want to risk the change. Because when you embark in having to listen to the other, when you enter into a room where all sides are to be given fair voice, and it might turn into a struggle, you risk at one point or another being convinced that possibly what I have done is wrong. And listening to the person and then giving that person some credit. So, in the act of struggling with the issue, in the act of wrestling with one another, we are changed. And it's exactly what happened to Jacob. Jacob was delivered a blessing, not so much that would resolve this conflict with Esau. The words have nothing to do with his interpersonal relationships with his brother and the struggle that he was about to meet. But it was a blessing of change. So much so that he's now to be given a different name. He's no longer to be called Jacob. He's to be called Israel. And that's why after that the Bible speaks about the 12 tribes of Israel. Those are his 12 sons. And he does have one daughter, at least that we know of, Dinah. It's always interesting to note the patriarchal society back then, that it's the lineage that goes through the men. But nonetheless, that was the dominant culture of the time. And so, by being blessed in such a way that he is transformed and changed, he could do no other. Now, who was he before? The word Jacob, the name Jacob, means deceitful in ancient Hebrew language. And that's exactly what he did in the previous stories in the book of Genesis. He deceived his brother. He deceived his older brother, deceived him from his birthright, later on from the blessing that his father was going to give him. And this is something that he didn't learn all in isolation. This is something he learned from his family. We hear in the scriptures how his mother Rebekah was also very cunning and would also instruct him on how to do things. And so now he's being given a different name, which means that he's no longer to be deceitful. He's no longer to be cunning. And so as he is going to approach his brother, he can't fall back on his own old ways. He must be different. There must be now a new approach. So what does he do? He humbles himself as he approaches Esau. He doesn't even try to explain anything or try to justify anything. This is why I did it, or this is what's going on. He humbles himself not once but 7 times. And he instructs his wives and children to do the same. This leads me to the third point. The third point is that Esau is still an important character throughout these stories. Traditional Judaism is always focusing on Jacob because the lineage goes through him, but there's always something to be learned from Esau. And in this point is that Esau was able to forgive. Esau was able to assess his brother who had changed and go ahead and embrace him. Now, it's no small and easy feat. That reconciliation is actually very, very poignant. What did Jacob steal from his brother? Well, his birthright, which meant that his brother was no longer to call himself the oldest. And then later on, he stole his blessing from his father before the father died, which means that he then had to be blessed in such a way that showed that Jacob would have dominion over him. So as Jacob is approaching Esau, not only does he bend his knee, but then later on he refers to him as my Lord. That restores Esau. Those are words that restore Esau back to his proper place. His birthright has been restored. And Jacob has made himself less under his brother, which is what his brother was always in contention of. And by doing this, Jacob received a much bigger reward than he expected. He did not receive his brother's wrath. He was not a victim of his brother's hand, Scripture tells us that they embraced each other and that they kissed and they wept. Imagine everything that was released from there, the guilt and the pain, and how good it must have felt. So it's not only because of Jacob's transformation, but Esau also was transformed from it. And what does that teach us? That when I change, there's a chance that you will change as well. That if I change my posture and I treat you with love, chances are you may change your posture and treat me with love as well too. But there's one thing we got to make note here that's actually very healthy. And I don't know that people noticed it for at least several centuries. But how is it that they reconcile? In the reconciliation, what is it that they do? They used to, back when they were young, live in the same home. They now went to separate lands. Esau, is said in the scriptures, went on to the lands that he had set up with his with his family. And Jacob settled in different lands, in the land of Succoth. So this says that, they're to keep some sort of distance, or to keep some sort of boundary. Isn't that healthy? Okay, I have to tell you, it may not be your experience, but in my experience, I don't know that I could live with my brother. I love the guy dearly, but he just drives me insane. And he's always picking on me. So, friends, there's a lot to be taken from this passage. There's a lot to be learned. We could take these stories of Jacob and Esau and so forth, and personally, as an individual, there's a lot here to be learned for us. There's a lot to change our lives at the individual level. But can we step back and look at this from a distance and see if there's a bigger application to it? See if this can be something larger than just ourselves. Can the lessons and the metaphors about Jacob struggling with the angel be applied to the church? I know that for centuries the church has been praying to God for a blessing. And that blessing usually revolves around numbers. Bring us more people. Give us more membership. Give us more young bodies. Give us more families. Give us people that can donate more money and that can work harder. And I don't know that sort of prayer is exactly what we should be praying for. And so when we're praying for that sort of blessing, is that what we're going to get? We know that that's traditionally what the church wants, but is it what the church needs? Or would it be a blessing of transformation? That just like Jacob, the church ought to have a new paradigm, ought to have a new outlook. And the church have to find a new way to relate with the new generation. Let's step back even further and see if this metaphor of Jacob with the angel applies to something even larger. Can this apply to our nation? Can we apply these internal struggles that Jacob has to our own countrymen? I don't know about you, but I'm actually pretty tired of listening to the news. I don't know that I could take another talking head analyzing what's going on in our political realm. And I'm so tired of it that I'm going through a fasting period. I'm self-imposing myself through a fast, and I'm going to make the following prediction, that after my fast, the news will be the same. If it won't be one thing, it'll be the other. And if it won't be one scandal, it'll be another. And if it won't be one contentious group against another contentious group, it just might be the same people, not passing legislation as it should be passed, not working together as the Constitution would have them work together. And so, what is it that we've always been praying for? That one party dominate against the other, that one wing of our nation be able to dominate the other, almost like in a wrestling match, and that one of them finally just cry uncle and give up? Or should we try and be praying for a blessing that provides for us a new paradigm, a new way to think, a new worldview as to how we ought to get together and try to make this nation a better place for all people? When we take a look at the different brothers and sisters in our community who are against each other, when we take a look at the different factions that are unable to find common ground, it is obvious that something needs to change. It is obvious that something's not working. And I feel that often we are like Jacob, and we're now going to enter this long night of the soul, and we need to wrestle. We need to wrestle about this, and in the wrestling, know that we're going to be changed. We will be transformed. This passage is really not about Jacob. This passage is not about how many children he was able to have with so many different wives, and it's not about so much the angel. This passage is about each and every one of us. Our ability to take a look in the mirror, our ability to enter into the night where we struggle and allow ourselves to be blessed, possibly not in the manner that we want, but in the manner that we need. And know that we might emerge a different person. Know that we might emerge a different person that will make better the lives of the people around us, with our brothers and sisters, with our family members, with our neighbors, with our co-workers. That the church should enter its long night of the soul and wrestle with itself as to what is it exactly the church needs to do, and receive a blessing that will transform it, so that eventually the church might become a better church to get along and attract a whole new generation to the teachings of God. That we as a nation should also enter that long night of the soul and wrestle with ourselves the things that keep us apart, so that we might emerge from it a better people, a better nation that knows how to provide for everyone. Amen.